Hey guys, welcome to what we at Redemption Church call Faith in Action, a brand new online midweek service we're going to be rolling out for the foreseeable future. I'm your host, Isaac Jeter, where each month we're going to be interviewing new local ministers of the Lord, whether it be a lead pastor, a youth pastor, a worship leader, or maybe even a local university professor. We're just going to pick their brains, kind of see how the Lord led them to the position they're in, and just kind of get the ins and outs of what it entails to be like a teacher or a pastor, whatever it may be. So come on, let's go on this journey together and really discover what it means to live your faith in action. So from the point you just made, I mean, ministry and marriage have to go hand in hand, not necessarily like I'm a pastor serving full time, but you have to always be Christ-centered in your marriage.
Yes.
And I will never argue any other way, and I don't think you would either.
I would not.
With that being said, with those who are ministers of the Lord full time, where they find themselves a worship leader or a pastor or a teacher at a university, tell me, how do you balance full-time ministry and being married and having children?
Ooh.
It's tough, isn't it?
You're going to step on some toes here, buddy.
Oh, yeah. Give it to me.
And it's actually, I love the question.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 20 years, just shy of 20 years inside the walls of a church.
Wow.
Okay. But been going to church for my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the most unhealthy marriages I've seen are church leaders.
Yeah.
Because what happens is they become so married to the church, she becomes the adulterous woman.
Yeah.
She gets all his time, all the emotion, she gets all the wherewithal, she gets everything.
Yeah.
So then when the pastor, the leader, the wife, or the spouse comes home, they've given everything to the woman outside the home. They can't give anything to the spouse inside the home. It just became very like a thing of mine a few years back that my family was going to trump everything. Remember now, you're talking to a guy back in episode 1.
Yeah.
I nearly lost my family.
Yeah.
At 28, I had been traveling playing poker at the time, and I was on my way to a poker tournament. Yeah, I was on my way. I played every day. I was on my way to a poker tournament and took a phone call that literally sent me to my knees. I fell to my knees. At that moment, confessed that I had run from the Lord my entire life. And when I stood up, Isaac, I was a completely different soul because of horrific decisions and bad choices and time management. I nearly lost every gift that God had given me. So for me, this is not a game to be played with. This is a very serious thing of going, no, I know what happened in the past and it'll never happen in the future.
That's right.
Never say never, but I'm going to do everything I can to stop it. So, I remember sitting in meetings, some of the biggest meetings I was in church world, and my phone would ring with my wife or my kids, and senior executive pastor of the church, the meeting stopped. I gotta take this call. It's my wife.
Yeah.
Well, we're in a meeting. Well, my wife's more important than all of y'all. So
combined.
Literally. So, it was just this thing to be able to go, in priorities of life, when you look at biblical priorities, you've got my relationship with God is number one. It trumps everything.
Yes.
How am I as a son of God? And I love this analogy that I use all the time, and it's the chocolate fondue fountain. If you look at a fondue fountain, the smallest pot is up top. But out of that smallest pot, everything flows.
Yeah.
So if I look at my relationship with God as that top tier of a fondue fountain, I want to know that's where me and God are. Everything's going to catch that. Well, the second tier is my wife, my spouse. She's the second tier that comes right out of that. Out of the third is my kids.
Yeah.
They're going to get my relationship with God, my relationship with my wife, and then out of them flows my occupation or my ministry. And so church was number 4 on the list for me. And it didn't change because, you have a higher level of leadership. Well, no, that God entrusted me more because I stewarded less well.
Yeah.
And so what I learned in this season was, man, do not sacrifice your family for the walls of a building.
Oh, yeah.
Especially, they're all ministers as well. They're all heirs of Christ. And so many times I've watched people's children walk away from the church because of how out of balance their parents were in the church.
I've always wondered, yeah.
And they walk away from it. Man, if that's the way that a husband treats a wife when they serve the Lord, I'm out. If that's the time that a husband spends at home, because every minute is at meetings and event after event after event, I want no part of it. I'll run my family different, and I'll love my family well. And it's horrifically sad.
It's terrible seeing your children especially walk away from the faith, that you're responsible for them. And like I had said, I always wondered, you have these prominent religious figures, but their children are heathens.
Yeah.
And
You can't, I mean, their children make bad decisions.
their children make bad decisions, but it's not all their fault.
No, and I firmly believe wholeheartedly that give someone enough time to talk about their past and where they've come from, you'll see where their present and where their future is headed.
Yeah,
and so you start digging up something, and that's not all, man. There's some, worked with some pastors, they've got it so figured out, it's challenging to me.
It's crazy
how they do it. They are so good at with their time management, loving the Lord, but boundaries around their family. There's some guys out there just absolutely slaying the game. But it is really a sad thing that in a majority, and I'll be honest with you, a lot of our marriage counseling and a lot of our marriage coaching, it's ministers.
Is it? Okay.
Ministers walking through horrific seasons of their life, bad choices, because the church became the thing. You can idolize a good thing.
Oh, I know.
And you make the church building or the people of the church. That's the other thing, the people of the church. Well, I should be able to call you 11:30 at night because you're the preacher. Hey, the preacher? Like, I am, but I have a family and I have boundaries. And there was times that even Jesus had to break away from the multitudes.
He had to pray.
To be with the few. It's like, it just, we got to put boundaries on this. We can't be all things to all people all of the time.
All the time, yeah. We can be all things to all people, but like you said, that's one of the things, like in terms of, with your religious leaders, it's, everyone wants a piece of you, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but everyone's got something going on. But laying down those boundaries, not that I'm higher, or, you don't deserve to talk to me type of thing, but say, hey, I got a family, I got other things I got to take care of.
Yeah, actually, it takes me back to Pastor Matt. He said in one of his episodes, and he's quoting a spiritual father of both of ours.
It was one of my fathers in the faith, mentor of mine, Pastor Ed Russo. He mentioned to me that he said the very best shepherds smell like their sheep.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I've always loved that so much, and he was sharing that with me about some of the greatest ways to be the best pastor is to be with your people.
So if I've got enough boundaries in place that I don't even smell like my sheep, well, I could be out of bounds the other way. Now I'm a detached shepherd who really has no clue what's happening with his people. So I absolutely want to be empathetic. I want to smell like the people that God has entrusted to me. I want to know them. I want to know their pains. I want to know what they're walking through, their good times and their bad times. But they also know enough about me. My closest people know enough about me that family is 100% first for me.
It's your priority.
And with the story now, which we didn't get into, but the story I have now, family is everything to me.
Yeah, I've watched some of your podcasts in preparation, and just to see that, hey, our church could be on fire, but if my son's calling and he's broken down or whatever it may be,
I'm gone.
He's on my list of things to get done.
That's exactly right.
And so going deeper a little bit more theologically on that principle, let's touch upon being first called by God to serve His people versus being first to be called to marriage, and seeing how certain denominations, namely Catholic and some Orthodox circles, require priestly celibacy, where marriage isn't allowed. And so how does that weigh in?
They're missing out.
I'm telling you, it's a loaded question. Keep going deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole. How do you, just from your experience and the research you've done, how does that weigh? Am I called to be a servant of the Lord for people in discernment, or am I called to be married first?
See, this was a very interesting thing to me. This actually made me go and do a little research.
Yeah.
Because this topic, I'm big on marriage.
Yeah.
I'm big on ministers and their marriage, and I help put them back together. And yeah, I got a whole group of people who believe, well, that's why they shouldn't be ministers, because they're married. And do you know, Isaac, the first recorded is like Pope George the 4th or the 7th. It was like 1074 AD. He put a decree out that the priest would be celibate.
Really? Okay.
So 1,000 years AD, okay, after Jesus, 1,000 years later, a pope comes around, and what it was there was this morality pull from their wives that was taking away from their spiritual pull of going after Jesus. And so he made this decree as pope of, listen, priests, you won't be married.
Yeah.
Listen, I love the thought of a man going, listen, God has got to be first in your life.
Yes.
100%. I believe that now. But what happened, people came behind him and actually said, the morality of a man won't be able to sustain this behavior. And Isaac, I think it's interesting to me now, 1,000 years later, what's happening amongst celibate priests that are pursuing God and the issues that we have. You know, not all, obviously, you can't throw everything, but there's a morality flaw that your flesh, right? Like, God created this desire. You even said, like, I have a desire to be married. I got to put it on hold until God opens that gift, right? Well, intimacy is the same exact thing. Like, it's this thought of all of us, we don't want to be isolated. We want that. And so I found it very interesting that, you know, a man can put out a decree and now denominations hold to it, but it's like, yes, I'm about it when Jesus should be number one. But I think it's not just, like, you can't say just don't be married and that fixes the problem.
Yeah, of course.
No, Jesus got to be number one. This is a heart, I call it heart transformation versus behavioral modification. If you modify behavior, eventually the behavior will go back to what it knows. Think about pornography, right? Nobody wants to look at pornography. What I'm going to do, I'm going to stop looking at pornography. Stop. I'm going to get accountability and covenant eyes. And well, 3 months when you've gone away from this moment of intense, like, conviction of the Lord, well, now the behavior's not the same. And you know what? Let me just disconnect covenant eyes, and, you know, maybe I'll just peek at it, right? That's behavior modification. It's exhausting. It's tiring.
Wow, okay.
Heart transformation, when your heart's been transformed to passionately seek Jesus, you don't look at porn not because you're not supposed to. You don't want to because it would shatter the heart of God.
Yeah.
So heart transformation is what it's about, not behavior modification. So, man, I don't knock any denomination. You do what God's called you to do. And if God led that Pope to do that, man, and it made people closer to Jesus, I'm about it.
Oh, yeah.
I just think there could be other avenues too when your heart is pursuant after the Lord.
Of course, yeah. And like you had said about the heart change, you had that yourself.
I did.
You knew, like, hey, I'm not even going to dabble. Like, I'm done. Like, my heart is sold out to the Lord. And that's why it can be interesting to navigate. Like, Lord, is it you first? Is it my wife? Or in terms of vocational ministry and stuff like that.
Always the Lord first.
Always the Lord.
But here's what the enemy does. The enemy on anything, remember, everything that's voiced or acted out, he knows.
Yeah.
And the Bible's very clear, Luke, I believe, the enemy will come back 7 times stronger.
If you don't put the word in there.
So when the house is put in order, the enemy leaves because there's nowhere to rest.
Yeah.
But he will come back 7 times stronger to see if the house is still in order. And this is where that place of, listen, you can dabble with the church being first. When the enemy comes back 7 times stronger, he's going to come back in ways that you never saw. And then your wife takes a back seat. Then your wife, then your family moves backwards because now he's 7 times stronger than he was when he left. So it's a very real thing, man. The enemy is against marriages. And now for the last 1.5 years, I have seen it more than ever. He's come after mine.
Wow.
Since I left the pastoral position, my family has been attacked more in the last 1.5 years in the hardest ways ever.
I
Literally.
believe it.
I mean, we lost our 17-year-old son.
Yeah.
Drowned in a car accident. This is my family, my marriage has come under fire. He's not just giving up because, Kirk's going after marriages. No, he's not. Oh, you're going to go after other marriages? Well, you better believe I'm coming after yours. So this is not a game to be trifled with, man. Your marriage is number one. It's a gift God gave you. Pursue Jesus and then love your wife passionately.
That's so powerful, Kurt. Thank you for being transparent about, you're not this leader that can't sympathize with the sheep. You know what it's like to truly suffer, even after you thought you got to the worst part of your marriage, only to suffer again.
Amen.
But again, you walk together, you come together, you make sure that, hey, we may not be right as rain right now, but if we're two broken people, we're going to be broken for better.
Amen.
That's why.
Broken for better, dog. Well done.
That's why your ministry is called that.
I like that.
It's been on my mind. And so kind of bringing this episode to the latter half, this is a fun but controversial question. Is it beneficial working alongside your spouse, or is it too convoluted? In ministry and whatever.
Yes. Now that I'm doing it, we're having to learn new things about it that we did not know. But in doing it well, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
That's beautiful.
This is my best friend. I mean, this is the person I do life with. We fought hell together.
Yeah.
Now, right, there's these moments, right? It's we started an organization together. So it's like, we have times it's like, well, I don't see it that way, and I see it this way, and why do you see it that way, and I don't see, and but there's the wins. To celebrate wins with your best friend. Nothing I would give for that.
That's beautiful.
So it can be done.
You
got to work at it.
Yeah.
And both people, again, you have to die to self. That's the thing. You go into anything selfishly and wanting your desire or you to gain out of it, you're going to be in trouble. I don't care if you work together or not. You're going to McDonald's. Well, if you want to go left and she wants to go right, you got a problem. Right? So it's like...
It's shorter this way.
Right? But there's more scenery.
Yeah.
The other way.
There's always... function over.
You just gotta learn it's dying to self, and sometimes, especially for this dude, that's not easy sometimes. But again, the hard times, the good times, wouldn't trade it for the world.
I love that response. And then the last one is, how do you integrate your children in the ministry? How do you have them? Okay, let's say you're a pastor or a worship leader, whatever, something that requires a lot of your ministry, and you don't have a nanny. You don't have a babysitter. You don't got grandma living next door that say, yeah, just bring them over.
Yeah.
You got to take them to the nursery. You got to take them to the kids' room or the youth room. How do they spend so much time at church and not resent God?
Well, the first question you have to ask yourself is, why do they have to spend so much time at church?
Okay, go deeper with that.
You don't have to. That may be, you have to evaluate, are you spending too much time at church? Are there other ways to do it? My kids grew up not hating the church because we didn't make the church their God. My kids loved the church. Wow. Cool. I mean, that's where they wanted to be. All of them pursued ministry. They were in ministry. Wow. Now God's taken them all on different paths. They're all doing, one's a firefighter and one owns his own business and Logan's with the Lord. But all of them were going into ministry because they watched two parents that I believe we did it as healthy as we could. We did it as real as we could. We kept church problems. Yeah. They never became our family problems. We made all the memories. We went and spent the time. I took weeks off. I took days off. We did all the things that you should do to where, church was Dad's job, or that's where Dad works. But man, we love to go there because we get to serve. We see the people we love. We get to passionately worship the God that we love. So, it's an assertive effort. I think what the question you asked though was the question, well, I've got no choice, and I would challenge that. I just would challenge that to anyone who would sit with me. Lay out your schedule. Be open. That's where marriage coaching comes in big.
Yeah.
There's no other option for us. Well, let's talk about it, because I guarantee you, when you begin to look at everything with a fine-tooth comb, there's other options. You've just got to be willing. Well, I don't have the time. Well, no, you don't have the ability to tell people no.
Right.
Oof. And so because you can't tell people no, now your family suffers. No, you have the ability.
Man, that's so insightful, you know, just going from how to balance your time with your family, how to use discernment about, am I going to be married or not? Should I be? What's more important, the Lord and my full-time vocation? So thank you so much for your wisdom.
Oh man, it's great questions.